Hello and welcome. I'm going to be doing 2 shows on Ukraine. The taping date is March 21st, 2022. I mention that because things are changing every day, as you all know. My first guest, my guest with me right now, is Irina Fursman. Irina is a woman with a really interesting background. She was born in Russia. She moved to Crimea when her father was killed. She went to university in Crimea, and in 2002, you came to the United States. Here she is an organizational consultant. Is that a good way to describe her work?
Absolutely.
She works with a company that she founded called Hugh Life, and is a for-profit consulting firm, and I'll have her tell you a little bit more about it. We're going to talk about her life, about people that she knows who are struggling getting out of Ukraine or dealing with hard stuff. And we're going to talk about resource information. And she's got some great tips for us. So welcome.
Thank
so
you.
Glad you could come down and be with us. First of all, I just wanted to tell you, we all feel, I think, almost all so sad about what's going on in Ukraine, and feel just kind of sick about it. But as you and I were talking, action is one of the remedies to kind of keep going, right?
It is for me, and it's not for everybody. But I am hearing more and more so people are saying, how can I help? What can I do? I feel helpless. There is nothing I can do to impact the situation. I don't believe that for a minute. If everybody does a little bit of something, small acts, collectively, we can really make a big difference.
That's such a good point. I think people have had that same kind of sense of helplessness about climate change. But I've heard a lot of the leaders in climate change movements say exactly what you're saying. We can't give up. We need to move in whatever way we can.
Climate change, corrupt systems like Soviet Union was and still is in Russia and in Ukraine for the last 20 years. It has been a struggle to move from hierarchical Soviet era agency to more democratic, trusted government, which what we founded in Ukraine and continued to work on up until COVID. And now with the war, all activity is stopped. But those are big issues. There are
Huge
social
issues.
issues, there are systemic issues, and most importantly, beliefs. When people's belief system is integrated in the way of life, it's comfortable. So we all contribute to the problem we try to solve and then complain about.
Well, you've certainly done a lot of things to help make things better. Tell us a little bit more about growing up in Russia. Not too many of us probably have an acquaintance or a friend or relative that has done that. What was life like for you before you went to Ukraine?
Yeah, just a little correction. I was born in Crimea.
Oh.
So my father and my mother met in Crimea. My father was from Lake Baikal area, Irkutsk. It's the deepest, largest body of water, fresh water on earth, if you didn't know.
I've heard about it.
It's a beautiful area. So he was a young officer, was stationed in Crimea. They met. My mom was a stewardess, and when she had 2 kids, myself and my youngest sister, she was in line, like everybody else in the Soviet Union, for housing as a family, not she by herself, in line on the waiting list, I should say, for housing and for daycare. Somebody else got in front of her. She went to complain. Next month, we were in Siberia. So that's how we ended up in Russia, and that's where I grew up. I was 4 when we were transferred. When 1991 collapse happened, as I shared earlier, my father was murdered. My mom didn't know what to do. And my sister and I were of age, for me specifically, she was a little younger, to start thinking about college. Nobody in my family went to college, except my grandmother on my dad's side. She was a math teacher, and I decided I want to be a math teacher.
Yes,
So,
she majored in math, I read.
Yeah, so that's what was an impetus for my mom finally deciding to move back to Crimea, which at the time was Ukraine. There were two reasons. If I need to go to school, going back to where her family is from might be safer because what was happening in Far East at that time is dangerous. It was very, very bad, chaotic times. The region was pretty much run by criminals.
So
It
we're
was not
talking
safe.
now, Irina, about the early 1990s.
93, yes.
Yes.
So we took our train, Trans-Siberian, from Far East Siberia to Crimea.
With everything you were able to take then, right?
Not a whole lot,
No, I'm sure
not a
not.
whole lot. But we ate chocolate for 7 days, and I still love chocolate after that. And fish, and that's what we had plenty of in Far East at the time.
So
Everything
you had
else was a
brought that
deficit.
with you then, the chocolate and the fish.
Dry fish, the
Right.
kind that can stay forever.
Right,
You
right,
don't
right.
need to worry about
right.
it being
Otherwise,
spoiled. Yeah.
that would not work. Was your mother able to be, this is such a dramatic time for her. Was she able to be a strong mother figure, or was she struggling in a way that you as the
great
older
question.
daughter felt,
Yeah.
that you needed to step up, or?
So growing up for me on the military base in Far East Russia, Far East Siberia, was a very closed community. Nobody could get in or out. It was a secret base, right? And there was not a whole lot of opportunities for wives, for women, to contribute or to be part of life. So if you're not a teacher, if you're not educated, you don't really have a whole lot of opportunities in that environment. So either staying home with kids, which most people did, and my mom ended up being a janitor at a dormitory for officers, right? So she was looking forward to coming back to Ukraine and maybe reinventing herself and finding a career or profession. She was only 38 at the time.
When you made the big train trip.
Yes,
And you were how old?
14, going on
14,
15.
Okay. And you were already thinking of college or dreaming of it?
At that time, our school system was 10 years, not 12. It changed since.
Okay.
So yeah, we all graduated at 16. Some of us, depending on your birthday, 17. But 16 was a graduating year.
Okay. So earlier than here.
18, you're drafted to go to the military if you're a man.
So you went to university after you got to Crimea and settled. And the name of it was the?
Simferopol State University, which was renamed to University of Vernadsky.
Okay. And majored in math?
Mathematics and computer science.
Ah, okay. And did your mother reinvent herself?
No,
She did
that
not.
was her hope. And it was not, she did not have the skills nor connections to get a job. And so I was the primary provider for my mom and for my sister for most of those years.
So you worked outside going to classes then too?
I did.
Wow. And how did you make the big decision to leave Crimea and leave your mother and sister?
Love, that was simple.
Ah, that will
So
do it every
that
time,
would
won't
do
it?
So Richard and I met online. Match.com was just about to get started. I believe it wasn't popular in 2002 as much as it is now.
Right.
So that was the path for me. He and I met. We wrote for a little while. It's a very long story, maybe for another time.
Okay.
A very romantic story, I would say. But it's 20 years. This year we're celebrating our 20th
Right,
year
okay.
anniversary.
And your husband's name is Richard Fursman. Well, yes, there's not time to go into more detail on that, but it's dramatic as up to this point for sure. You are called now, I read somewhere, Irina, enemy of the people. And is that something that, who gave you that label?
Enemy of the state.
Who?
It's an enemy of the state.
Enemy of the state, okay.
And that is a real, I did not know until that incident happened that it's an actual thing in today's environment. Something from back, from KGB times, right? If you are,
Right.
if you're not in line with politics, party politics or direction of, in some way or shape or form, you're somehow acting or behaving as a threat to the system, you will be on the blacklist and you'll be called enemy of the state. And in 2013, it was first year when I did training in Ukraine. So I took our tools. This was the very first year after forming Global Synergy Group as a nonprofit organization. We went there and worked with nonprofit leaders in developing facilitation skills. And those facilitation skills involved groups of 20 people coming together, which is not allowed in Russia for any kind of advocacy work. And it also involved flip charts and markers, thinking critically, asking good questions, and helping them to sustain their efforts and engage community in the work that they were doing. So fast forward from November 2013 to early 2014, you see pictures of me on the news that says that the CIA agent is training Ukrainians in how to build Molotov cocktails with flip charts and markers.
We really would call now disinformation at a high level.
Yeah.
Oh. Did that scare you at the time in terms of what's going to happen to me?
It did not. I was angry more than anything because what it did, it prevented me to going back to Russia. I could still safely go to Ukraine because this was done through Russian propaganda and the channel, which another story, my mom was watching that and I called her and I said, "Did you just see what happened on the news? It was national news." She said, "Yeah, what did you do?" I said, "Mom, you know what I'm doing, you know what my work is." And she didn't believe me. She thought I was really an enemy of the state, working to instigate overthrow of government in Ukraine.
So that must have kind of broken your relationship into...
It didn't. I'm a facilitator. I'm a professional. I can continue to engage in conversation. We're still talking. As mad as I am, as hard as it is, I will never stop talking.
Oh, that's great. That's great, but that's sort of superhuman, isn't it?
Yes.
But that's a great model for everybody.
That's the only way. The minute we shut the doors, what's an alternative?
So your mother is still in Crimea now.
She is.
And your sister, and you're keeping in touch. And you said they were safe, but of course Crimea is Russian occupied, so they're probably not nearly as fearful as most people in Ukraine.
Correct.
What do you think Putin's goal is with this horrible push that he's got going?
Nobody knows what's really happening in Putin's mind, but my fear, the worst case scenario, that it's going to be chemical weapons or biological weapons that are going to be used in order to submit Ukrainian people, right? And the communities that I worked with flip charts and markers and trained people are the ones who are now trying to organize and kind of work underground, bringing supplies and medicine and food and whatnot to the people who are resisting, because as long as we can provide a lifeline to them, they'll resist, but when it stops, they will have no choice. And they will say whatever they would need to say in order to save themselves too.
Are things tightening up now in a way that is more alarming to you than a week ago, 2 weeks ago, in terms of supplies getting to the people who need them?
I had a couple of those events. So I'm sending money every day. Whatever we collect today goes out from our
Right
bank
away.
tomorrow to those people in Kherson, Kharkiv, Mariupol, and Nikolaev. So those are the areas we're focusing on right now.
Okay.
And so when I didn't hear from one person in Mykolaiv for 2 days, and I've sent 2 transfers already, and my board is asking me what's the report back on that spending, and I didn't hear from him, I was worried about his life, not that he took the money and ran.
Right.
And when I found out that he was back online and connected with him, his father did not survive the shelling, and so he had to take 2 days off to bury his father and then to reorganize, bring his sister to Czechoslovakia, come back, and now he's back to work.
But of course you would think the worst right now.
Yeah, and so those people are resilient. Yes, some left, but those who are staying are not going anywhere if we can keep.
I think that's what has surprised and impressed the people here that I talk with and read about. The resilience is, and the bravery, the courage, it seems that it's extraordinarily high. Do you have a sense of what in your history in Ukraine has resulted in that?
I think it's both. It's historical DNA of, I would imagine, and again, I'm not from Ukraine.
Right.
I'm from Crimea.
Right.
I became more Ukrainian when I moved to the United States and started working and understanding the history and the background. But Ukrainian people have always fought for their independence for hundreds of years, right? Constantly being dominated by another country and fighting for their own little piece of land. Ukraine actually means Ukraina, borderland. That's the translation.
I read that.
So
that's apropos, isn't it? The way
correct.
their lives have gone.
Yeah. The earlier Ukrainians, Kazakhs, have always elected their leader. So they are one of the earliest democracy too that most people don't know. So the democratic principles have always been part of Ukrainian culture. Call it a tribe for now, right? Because of Slavic different groups, it's still tribal even in that area.
Right. You know, one of the pieces I just read about Ukraine a few days ago was that there's almost like a civil war, this author said, with such a different mood in the west of Ukraine compared to the east. And I've not heard a lot about that in general news. And I wondered if you would agree with that, if there's
100% disagree.
Disagree?
Disagree.
Okay.
I would be more in agreement 10 years ago, 2012, because of what we saw in Crimea. Crimean, mostly Russian-speaking population has accepted the savior Vladimir Putin, and we're very proud to be back reunited with Russia. And at that time, I believed that eastern Ukraine probably would be in the same space, which would create the west and east type of conflict. One of the stories I would share, one of the youth programs that we did during that time, 2015, we had youth from Ukraine, western part, speaking Ukrainian language, and youth from eastern part, Kharkiv, speaking Russian language, and American youth in one forum. And when I spoke Russian, the Ukrainian youth challenged me, because I don't speak Ukrainian. I speak Russian language, and I'm still Ukrainian. They challenged, why is our speaker, our moderator, speaks Russian and not Ukrainian? And this is 2015, right after 2014 invasion. So it was very, very on high sensitivity, high alert type of situation. And we had to pause and have that conversation and come to grips with, doesn't matter what language you speak. You want me to speak English? I'll speak English. And we had a real tough, some people cried, kids cried, they came back, we had a hug, and we moved on. But politics get in the way of making people more divided, right? So the Vladimir Putin propaganda and the Western, same thing. There's both sides of that story, of that conflict, are continuing to feed narratives to create this divide around language. So if you don't speak my language, therefore you're the enemy. And that's not true today. I think this war, the way things are unfolding and everybody is really uniting around the common enemy, is the one who takes away their freedom, who doesn't want them to exist as an independent country. No matter what language you speak at this point, these people from Kharkiv, from Donetsk to Lviv, wanted to be Western society, not living under the thumb of, I don't have good words for Putin, but.
Pope Francis used the word repugnant. what he's doing is repugnant. I thought that's a strong word for the Pope, but an accurate word.
Yeah.
So you're saying that language is not crucial at all at this point, even though it maybe was at one point. But people are, I'm guessing, somewhat maybe suspicious at first until they get to know somebody, if the person does speak just Russian.
When I first, back in 2012-13, went back to Ukraine with some of our trainings, I was nervous about that because I did not speak Ukrainian. And I was very careful about who will be in our groups to make sure that, because I didn't know how that will be perceived. Now, when I speak Ukrainian, when I speak Russian, individuals who speak Ukrainian talk to me in Russian. They switch to speak the same language out of respect. Okay. So I think that was an evolution over time.
That's good, isn't it?
I would agree 10 years ago it would have been true, but not today.
What do you think, and we don't have a lot of time left, what do you think we as Americans can do, Irina, to help at this point? What is the most important thing that you think the Ukrainians need who are still in the country?
We have shown a lot of support as American, as Western society in general, right, to Ukrainian people. And everybody gets tired after a while listening to the same news. So the most important thing is to not forget, is to continue to have this conversation.
Keep talking.
Keep talking about it. And keep talking about it in two ways. One, in support of Ukrainian people and continue to help them in terms of just moral support. We're here with you. And obviously financial, and our governments need to do whatever they need to do to make sure this conflict ends soon rather than later. But also talking about, as I said before, Russian-Ukrainian language. We don't need to demonize Russian people.
No.
We don't need to create another situation.
And many of the Russian people are not at all supportive of Putin.
They're victims in many cases. Maybe they're ignorant, maybe they're mobs, but by calling those, but acting in a very violent way towards them is going to hurt Ukrainians and everybody else in the world. So I think it's just a matter of remembering that people are people. We're all capable of horrible things. And we're all capable of love and kindness. And if we can continue to bring love and kindness and peace and bridging our differences, even in times of war, it's hard, but even then, if we can do that, then I think we have a chance. Otherwise, we'll never get to a place where there will be truly peace. We'll have generations. Ukrainians and Russians hating each other.
Yeah, there's...
And Americans will be always pointed to as the party that made it happen. Because
of the Cold War and all the...
Because we're always in the middle.
That's a good point. So you've got a nonprofit within your work organization that you can tell us more about quickly. We've got just a couple minutes left. But if we send money to this nonprofit, you can help get it over to the right people, right?
Right. So
people that need it the most.
People who we know and trust personally, with whom we worked. And so those who we've trained, over 200 individuals who have NGOs, who have small nonprofit companies, who work for municipal government or an academic institution. What they did, they figured out, those who stayed, not everybody stayed, those who stayed, they figured out a way to self-organize and provide to the city, to the community, what they need to sustain life while they're being bombed and occupied by the Russian military. So we, as nonprofit, decided to focus on our partners, students and graduates of our programs, who we trained to do the civic work. Now they're surviving, and we need to help them to do it at the very different level. You're right, they're doing the civic work today.
And you said to me before we started taping that helmets are needed, vests are needed that help protect. Those kinds of things are kind of at the top of your list, correct?
So when Americans are asking, what can we do to help? Because Ukrainian people have somebody in Ukraine probably they're connected to personally and have very personal relationship and cause. For the rest of us who don't have relatives, I would say start with the cause. What are you passionate about? What do you want to support? Not everybody feels comfortable, perhaps, supporting arming people.
Right.
Not everybody might be feeling comfortable in supporting evacuation process,
So
which is
figure
quite
out
costly.
what your heart.
Yeah, where you're
calls you
at.
to.
There's larger organizations that will probably be there for a long time, now and afterwards, helping rebuild. But it depends on what your cause is. If you would like to find out more, on our website, we have different ways to donate with trusted agencies, and then you can decide where you want to help. Orphans, families, women.
So there are lots of options. That sounds perfect. Tell us the website,
Okay,
and
it's
we will put that on the screen.
absolutely.
So you can use that and then find under that other options.
Other options, absolutely. It's globalsynergygroup.org. www.globalsynergygroup.org.
Okay, well that's a key resource here for us, and I think I'll sign
Thank
up
you.
tomorrow.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you very
Well,
much.
I wish we had more time. It went so quickly, but thank you so much for sharing your personal story and thoughts about the situation now. It's very important, as you say, for us to hear each other and to learn more and to learn from and with each other. So
Absolutely.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us. I'll be back again next week, and I'll be talking next to a professor here from Minnesota who is an international manager with trade with Ukraine and Russia. I'll see you next week. Take care.